You know, if it weren't for God at my age and all the wonderful things I have ever seen in my life that were not corrupt, were not inherently evil, were not really bad, and you know that I had a terrible upbringing. I had a terrible life. And I am sure there are many of us that have come out of such a thing. But at the same time, the nation on a whole wasn't as bad as everywhere you turn now. Everywhere. I mean, there's probably not a single thing that is not corrupt. I think about how Jesus said it will be like the days of Noah. And if you remember what God said about the days of Noah, he the, uh, the Bible talks about how God literally was so grieved, so hurt over what man was doing that he said he repented of making man. He got to a place where he said that the thoughts of the imagination of their hearts were continually evil. Continually. I mean, for God to say that something is continually evil, that means that's a flow of evil that is non-stopping. When you think about a dark abyss, like the bottomless pit, you say to yourself, why would something be called a bottomless pit? Well, the darkness that runs through man through his own choice is like a bottomless pit. He never runs out. No matter where he goes, no matter what he does, and I'm talking about she also, because all of mankind is both men and women, no matter what happens, no matter what they do, they have another evil, corrupt thing to do. They have another evil idea. They have another evil way. They have another. They constantly, you see, when their backs are up against the wall and they're caught, and I'm not talking about any particular person, I'm talking about human nature. I'm talking about people who you know as well as I know that you see them constantly refuse to accept responsibility for their actions. And in so doing, when their back is up against the wall and they are caught, the light shines on them and it's so bright and there's nowhere to go and nowhere to turn. So they turn to their evil imagination that works with their ideas and their thoughts on how to get out of it, how to blame it on someone else, how to never, ever give in to the truth, how to never, ever turn away from doing evil. There's never one thought with them, not one tiny little thought that they could be wrong. Because you see, long time ago, when there was a time in their life, and that long time could have been yesterday, could have been last year, could have been 20 years ago, could have been 50 years ago. But there was a time in their life that God revealed to them the truth and gave them a choice. For you see, God is not so unrighteous that he would not allow you to know the truth. Listen to what Psalm 19 says. Psalm 19 says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows you his handiwork. Night after night, day after day, there is not a single place where the sound of what they have to say is not heard. So God is telling you clearly, plainly. There is not a place on this earth that you could go, that you could think, that you could do, that what God wants and His glory and His truth and His creation tells you exactly what to do with what He created you. Common sense is something God literally dishes out, and they just throw it out. They throw it out the way they should be throwing out Satan. They throw it out. So they engage in lies. And lies are something that grow and they have roots. And, and if you were to draw one lie that leads into another lie that leads into another lie, you would just get bigger and wider and deeper and down, further and further into the root of this evil, wicked world. And because you're able to plant yourself in these lies, you're so foolish. You are so foolish that you think that the day is never going to come where you're not going to be able to keep track of them. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about how God made man and how He must be laughing at their ignorance, laughing at their supposed wisdom that defies Him and hates Him and tramps on the blood of Jesus Christ. I'm laughing because I'm sitting there with Him and I could see that He says, they think they're so smart, Marion. I mean, He talks to me often like that. They think they're so wise. And He said, but the deeper they go and the farther they go into lies, one day, suddenly they can't keep track anymore. Suddenly they can't understand or remember anymore. Because you see, when a person makes a decision to do something very corrupt and they pretend it is good, I'm not talking about the person that knows they're corrupt, knows they're a liar, knows they're a cheat, knows they're even a murderer. Those people are probably easier to save than the one who sits there in authority and will never admit they're wrong, never admit they can do wrong. And so they lie. And they lie, 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 lie. And suddenly, one day, they can't keep track anymore. Like I tell a story about the one woman who behind my back, and I had no idea. I love this woman very deeply. The Lord tried to warn me, and He tried to warn me, and I wouldn't listen. I just thank God that it didn't hurt me when I found out the truth. But one day she walked into my presence, and I think I told the testimony of how I could see by her face something was going on behind my back. That was the first time I could really see it. And she was just so happy with the lies that she was telling behind my back. And she thought because she had a pastor she could lie to, and that pastor lied back to her, and they were like this, she thought everything was fine. And when she came into my presence, and I find it funny because she had no idea. She came into my presence and she began to talk to me with exactly the words and the way she was talking behind my back to people. Exactly. It was no difference. It was the same words, the same way. And when she said that and did that with me, she had no idea. She was revealing to me everything that was done in her secret. Because she was so used to planning this lie and playing with that lie and manipulating this, and she couldn't keep track anymore. She got to a place where She thought she had it all. And there she was, confessing to me what she had done behind my back. Well, it wasn't it wasn't a funny thing to me then. It was a terrible tragedy because she broke my heart because I loved her that much. And that's when I told her, I said, I will never come to this house again. And God had just told me 5 minutes before that. He said, you will never come to this house again for prayer. And I wondered why. And then a few moments later, she walked in and I saw everything. It was amazing to me how God does things like that. You know, the little things that we think don't mean anything. Like today, my husband and I went to the store, and you have to understand, my husband is on heavy duty medication at times, and you don't always think straight with that kind of medication. Oh, he's able to do this and he's able to do that, but sometimes he might stand there and say things that are just way off the wall. And and it's because maybe his body got tired or whatever, because he comes right out of it. It's like a personality thing from the influence of this medicine. And some people have mind altering drugs. Anyway, we were in the vegetable department, and he was standing there looking, and he could not find any carrots. He refuses to buy carrots that are organic and pay a higher price for them, and uh, and they're organic. He just refuses. And there was a whole bunch of them, but there was no carrots. And the only carrots we could find was the 10-pound bags. And he picked it up and said, "You don't want this 10-pound bag of carrots." And I said, "No." So he stood there and he just was practically staring. And he turned around, and behind something, it was really amazing. Behind something was hid a package of carrots that was perfect little size of what we use as a couple. It was like as if God hid it just for us. And he went, "Hey, look." And he pulled it out of nowhere. And he said, and I said, "It's just the size for us." And it was marvelous. I mean, it was only a bag of carrots. But God has done so many miracles for you that you haven't even seen, that you haven't taken time to notice. Like the time that he went out to buy me a golf cart. So he goes looking at these golf carts, and they had one there that was like a real pretty raspberry type of color. Never seen another like it. Never seen it afterwards or before. It just was a very unusual color with white seats and a white top. And he looked at that and he said, "Boy, I'd like to get that for her birthday, but I don't know." He's so, how do you say, he's so frugal. It was too much money for him. So the next year, he goes back to the exact same place and he decides he's going to buy me a golf cart for my birthday. And it was amazing because that exact same golf cart was sitting there. And the man said to him, "You know, when we painted that, it was so pretty. We thought for sure it would be one of the fastest selling that there was. And here it has sat for a whole year. And now we're beginning to believe the reason why it wasn't sold is it was meant for your wife. Because here you are coming back a year later and you buy it." And he was right. I used that golf cart at the campground we used to be owners of. And uh, and the kids would all pile on it. We would just drive through there, and it was just so much fun. And some of them, they would be yelling and hollering and having so much fun, and some of them would be, if I hit a bump, they would bounce off and fall on the ground, just giggling like crazy. And that was the same group of children that I took to the neighbor's house. Well, it was the neighbor's camper place, one of the owners, and because there was several owners of the campground, and her property needed cleared up, and she had cancer and she couldn't do it. So, the kids were so happy. They had so much fun going out there and cleaning up the neighbor's property. They were just wonderful kids. I mean, this is probably 25 years ago. They're probably well grown up by now, but they were great kids. The one in particular I told you about, they called him Little Mikey. Little Mikey, they laughed at me and they said, "You'll never get little Mikey to behave. Never. He'll never sit in a Bible study atmosphere where you could sit and tell him about God because he will not behave." And I never had to discipline Mikey. I never had to pray for Mikey in the sense of, "Oh God, help him, make sure he does." I never did any of that. I never had to. The spirit and power of God in me was powerful enough to reach little Mikey. And from the moment he came into my presence, he fell in love with Jesus Christ. And he was 5 years old and just the cutest little thing you ever saw. And his mother tells me he would get up 5 o'clock in the morning and get all spruced up and bathed and everything and have his hair just perfect, waiting for 11 o'clock to come so that he could go to Bible study with Mrs. Lynch. It was amazing. And he would sit there and just love to hear that there was a God in heaven that had a son that loved him and that he could pray in the name of Jesus and see mommy and daddy healed. Ah, he just drank up and ate everything you talked to him about. God's creation, God's love, God's everything about Jesus Christ. He just drank it like he was so thirsty. And he was only 5 years old. And he was considered to be a handful. And he was never a handful for God. I thank my Lord for the times that I was able to be with children. Because you see, when we have enough of Jesus Christ in us, we can bring out the best out of the child or the worst out of the child. Unfortunately for me, when my child was real young and stuff the way he was, I didn't have God. I didn't understand anything. I only did the best I knew how. But fortunately for me, I could get to know little Mikey. Fortunately for me, I was able to be with children that were phenomenal. Fortunately for me, I could know the love of children. Oh, I'm alone now with my daughter gone. And it's again just me and Jesus. And there's no sorrow in that. As much as I miss her, there's no sorrow. And it's coming up to the date when she passed, and that's okay now. I mean, I'm blessed. I am truly, truly blessed. I only hope that everybody that hears my voice knows the joy of living for Jesus Christ, knows to be able to look at him and see him the way he truly is. See his love for you that is so great. Not because you're anything, Not because you're special, not because you're wonderful, not because you've done good, not for any other reason. Like in the book of Peter said, when somebody rebukes you and is, does something to persecute you, and it's because you've done wrong, that's one thing. But when you know you've done no wrong to anybody and they still do that to you, that is when you take that the way Jesus Christ did. And how could any any of us ever think for 1 minute that someone else deserves to be punished for things that we ourselves did before we got saved? Things that we used to think, things we used to plan, things we used to do. I mean, not meaning that they were so evil and not meaning that they were so corrupt, but meaning they were of the flesh and they were not Christ-like. But yet, he loved us enough to die for us. Because in our best times, in our best way of thinking, in the best that we had in our hearts, in the best that could come out of our imagination, no matter how great it was, no matter how good it was never enough to get us into heaven. Because not one sin will ever enter into heaven. And all of us have fallen short of the glory of God. All of us. There's not a one of us that didn't. Oh, we compare ourselves to each other and say, well, I never did what that one did. Like, I'm so much better. Well, I would never say what that one said. I would never go where that one went. Yeah, but you probably did other things. You, like I heard one daddy say, all right, so you didn't do it this time and you got a spanking. Well, you probably at one time got away with it, so you deserved it. I'm not saying I agree with that man, but I know his son, and his son told me that's what his dad used to say all the time. That he never backed up and never said he was wrong. He always said you must have deserved it or you wouldn't have got it. Like I said, I don't agree with that, but as you can tell, you might have heard the thunder. We're so blessed here in Florida to have the rain. We could be in a drought. We could have troubles. But every day in Florida, it rains. And I'm happy it does. Because the sun comes down and bakes everything really hard. And Florida is sand. And so that means that the water doesn't soak into the ground like it does in the ground up north. The surface of it is sandy. But we are blessed to be here. I don't think I could ever go back and live in Pennsylvania because of the climate up there. You get used to where you're at for the last 30 years, 30 or 40 years. Anyway, it feels like I'm just having a little talk with some of my people. If you were sitting in front of me, this is probably how I would be talking to you right now. Hoping to encourage you, hoping to strengthen your beliefs and your faith. Hoping that you have a good, blessed day.